And we are back. Another edition of Hip Politics News in the Morning. It's your boy, Mr. Cameron Calvin, reporting for Hip Politics News. Big changes at the post office, people. I feel like when something this seismic happens in the news that it could affect our everyday lives or something that could affect everything from your taxes to your bills to your business to even your right in making sure your vote counts, we would know more about this, but something that happened, I think, slipped under the radar, but it affects literally everybody in America. There's changes to how things are now postmarked. That might not seem like a huge deal, but if you've ever tried to do something and slip something into the mail on time, whether it be a birthday card, a bill, your taxes, your vote, a charity donation, and you needed it postmarked, that little date on the end of that little date, that stamp that says this is when it was received. There's so many legal implications to that, and that entire system has changed. The U.S. Postal Service has been calling it the Postmark Pivot. I guess they're just trying to come up with some cool fancy name, but basically it means the date on your envelope might be wrong even if you mail something on time. And I really wanted to break this down to everybody because these can change so many deadlines and so much that people depend on. They're trying to make sure something is postmarked by to make sure that they don't get hit with late fees or maybe not even count it. So the postmark, it's the black little ink stamp that the post office puts on a letter. It shows usually the date and the city of where something comes from. This is for a long time. If you just went and dropped something in the mailbox, if you dropped something over at the front desk, or you dropped something in the slot at a post office, and you said April 15th, and that's when the taxes were due, as long as you got in there by 11:59 on April 15th, that it was stamped as this was received and postmarked by April 15th. That may not be the case anymore. So you gotta might need to watch that. So what's the new rule? Instead of that postmark being when the post office received it, and that little black date coming from wherever post whatever that your letter, your taxes, your any piece of mail was received, it now needs to go to a sorting center, which could be 1, 2, maybe even 3 days away from when you deliver it to a post office. So now postmarks are officially going to be when a machine scans it at this big sorting system. At the excuse me, at this big sorting center. So if a letter takes 2 or 3 days to get postmarked, even after you dropped it in, that could have so many implications. And like, so why are we covering this on the Hill Politics? Why does it matter to you? That's what you want to know. First of all, your taxes. April 15th is what is known as tax day. I know so many people who are trying by the skin of their teeth to turn their taxes in, get their taxes filed, make sure they don't get any penalties or whatever, and they're right in there on April 15th. Well, now you're gonna not that's not necessarily going to be the case. So if the sorting machine doesn't postmark it by that day, which means it might take 2 or 3 days previous to that. So hopefully the IRS is saying they're going to offer a lot of guidelines and be able to put stuff out. If it went under the radar or anything like this news, I hope they do a lot more advertising around this, or we're going to have to be a little more diligent about finding it. But we'll make sure we bring that news to you. Something simple like, say you want to give to charity, but you want to give to charity, get a tax break in 2025. So if you're hearing this today when I'm recording it, you got about less than 24 hours to get something in because this rule is already in place. But if you don't get it to a sorting center or you don't get it postmarked at the front desk of a mail at the front desk in a post office, guess what? It's not going to count toward this year's taxes. And then I think the most importantly thing, and this is the most important thing that affects not just politics, but kind of, I think, one of our basic fundamental rights here as Americans here in this democracy is voting. And this is the scary one because a lot of people mail in their ballots for a lot of different reasons. Some people just aren't able to get to um, a voting center or not able to get, whether they're elderly, they're hurt, Maybe it's just too far away. Maybe they're on travel. Maybe they're in the military. Maybe they're living overseas temporarily or visiting for whatever reasons, and they're not there during on voting day in November, or they're not able to get there during the early voting period. A lot of people wait or mail in those votes in, and it's not a uniform mail in your vote day. And so you may be thinking, all right, voting is due and this mail-in ballot is due on November 3rd. I'm gonna drop it in the mailbox by November 3rd. Really, you needed to drop it in October 30th or 31st because it might take 2 days and it's the weekend and processing, and now you're not counted. We've seen with the reason why this has such deep implications, such deep implications across the board in this country is like there's no uniform voting system for the entire country. Different states have different voting election commissions, and they have different rules and laws. Most of them are similar, but they're all very different. And because we don't have uniform voting across the country, that means you're not sure when exactly your vote will be counted or how soon in advance of the deadline do you need that. And that's just another way to disenfranchise you, another way to suppress different votes. So, how do you protect yourself? Couple things. I think it's dead for the blue boxes. I don't see that many of them, the little blue mailboxes everywhere, but it's dead for those. Like those were already felt a little useless. Those already felt like sometimes sticking your mail or sticking your package into a black hole. Well, now you can't even guarantee that the pickup times it says, if it gets picked up that day, that it's going to be processed that day. So now you don't know when those things are going to be processed and when things are going to be postmarked. The number one thing is going to be walking inside the post office and talking to the person at the front desk and ask them for a manual postmark. They have the ability to do this, a manual postmark. I know this is just going to increase the lines, probably going to increase and annoy a bunch of postal service workers who are already overworked because they've been cutting down and scaling back on the postal system. But if you want to guarantee that date is there, you're going to have to go online during the post office hours and get a manual date. Certified mail. This costs more, and you got to pay a little extra to a lot extra, depending on how big of the piece of mail is. But if you go get something certified, that certification letter and that certification date is going to be clear around when something was postmarked. Or I guess you just got to do everything over online. If they weren't trying to already push you to digital, and I know we have a huge digital divide, we've talked about that in previous news and reported on that as well. But maybe some of these things that you may have gone through physical snail mail, you now have to go online. But the post office says they're doing this to save money, be more efficient, faster machines. It sounds good, but I know it makes harder. Something this critical, like I said, something being postmarked 1 or 2, 3 days could cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, could cost you your right to vote, could cost you, um, if you're donating money, could cost you a ton of money on your taxes. There's so many different, and if you're running a business, it could cost you late fees. It's so many different things if things are not postmarked, and the legal ramifications of things being postmarked by a certain time. And now that that is a little bit up in the air, it's going to be really hard, I think, for a lot of us to, even if the post office says it's about efficiency, for us to adopt. So I just wanted to make sure we brought this news to you here today. And make sure you head to your post office and go on the United States Postal Service's website just to get all the clear new rules. And so with that, want to thank you again. Another segment of Hip Politics News. Peace.